Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Cadon Diaz, and I'm the Executive Director at LAMP Community Health Center, and I'm pleased to be here as one of your hosts this evening. LAMP and Daily Bread Food Bank are collaborating to bring to you tonight the Etobicoke-Lakeshore All Candidates Town Hall. Joining me tonight are two Neils. First Neil is here with me. This is Neil Bowden, who is a local resident and has been a board member at Daily Bread since 2014. Neil will be helping me to close out the meeting this evening, and the moderator this evening will be the other Neil, Neil Hetherington, the Chief Executive Officer of the Daily Bread Food Bank. I'd like to start this evening with a land acknowledgement and ask you to join me in that. We are here on site at Daily Bread Food Bank at the warehouse, and you're joining us both in person and from across the Etobicoke Lakeshore riding. I'd like us to start with an acknowledgement of what it means to be here on this land today. This land is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands. As part of this agreement, the nations described a responsibility to ensure that the dish is never empty. And this is why we are here today. As a settler on this land, I commit to my responsibility to follow in the spirit of this agreement, to not only show respect for the land, but to uphold the principles of reconciliation with the many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples who live here today. As we move into today's proceedings, I ask that each of you reflect on the sacred relationship between the land, peoples, and food, our most basic human need. As a member of LAMP Community Health Center, I just wanted to say it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. LAMP has been providing community services in the Etobicoke Lakeshore area for about 46 years now, and we are very proud to be part of this community. We know things like food, employment, shelter, and housing are important determinants of health, and look forward to hearing more about how we will support residents of the Etobicoke Lakeshore community through our conversations with our candidates this evening. And with that, we will move toward welcoming our candidates. So I will start in alphabetical order. Welcome our NDP candidate, Farheen Alim. Welcome. It's okay to clap, go for it. Yes. Yes. Um, our Ontario Liberal candidate, Lee Fairclough. Welcome, Lee. And our Green Party of Ontario candidate, Thomas Yanuziello. Welcome, Thomas. And I would love to introduce you to our moderator this evening. Neil Hetherington joined Daily Bread Food Bank as CEO in January 2018. Neil's nonprofit experience includes 16 years as CEO of Habitat for Humanity in Toronto and then New York City, and 2 years as CEO of Dixon Hall, a multi-service agency with 240 staff serving thousands of people in Toronto through its social programs, shelters, seniors programs, youth initiatives, and community revitalization efforts. We're thrilled to have Neil as the moderator today and welcome him to the stage.
Welcome, everybody. We are really glad that you're with us tonight. This is important, what we're talking about. You're going to hear some noise, I think, during the candidates' debate coming from the southwest corner of the building. And that noise are individuals who are having to make use of the food bank tonight. And I believe that a common vision right across the platforms is a province where there is no need for a food bank. But sadly, that's not the case right now. Since before the pandemic, we were seeing approximately 160,000 client visits per month. 60,000 clients per month. and that number has shot up to 160,000 client visits per month. And so we know with that common value and that common vision that we can do something. We fundamentally believe at Daily Bread that the opposite of poverty is not wealth, but justice. And we have an opportunity through how we make decisions to ensure that justice is spread across this province. I want to thank our tremendous partners in LAMP. LAMP is a partner that has done tremendous things in the community and lives out those common values. They are providing green thumbs in our partnership at a community garden just outside the doors here, and making sure that we are living in a community where everyone can thrive. And I'm grateful for our ongoing partnership with them. I have a few housekeeping items for you. So the first is, if you need to go to the loo, it's right there, or you can find it back at the entrance that you found your way through. Thank you. And if this is the magic bowl, the items. I want to also mention that we do have information on how to vote. The province does important things. The important things like healthcare and social services and job placement and employment services, and your vote matters. And if you do need information on how to vote, those you can just visit the one of these tables here. All right, so let's get going. First of all, I need to explain the rules of tonight. To help me do that, I am going to tell you a joke. So here it is. How do you know a dad joke is a dad joke? It will be apparent. And what will also be apparent is if you guys start going over your time, that there will be a gong. That will be very apparent, and it will ring. We will also give you a little bit of a notice board from Jamie, letting you know that there's 30 seconds left in your response time. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have each of the candidates say a few words, three minutes, to let us know all about them in that amount of time. And then we've got 4 questions. After that, we are going to be taking questions here. And if you've got a question, we'd ask that you write it down and provide it to somebody who is also known as, this is me delaying right now, looking for a cue, that they will pass those questions to anybody that is located right. Omar, who do they pass questions to? Oh, either side. Okay, so if you could write down a question and pass it to them, if yes. Are available at each of those if you would like. Since it's sparse on it, let's see how it goes. Yeah, I think maybe we'll make an audible on that, but we also want to make sure that people online, and right now we've got about 50 community residents online, and they have the opportunity to provide questions by simply emailing us. And if they email research@dailybread.ca, we will make sure that their questions also get in there. But I think that might be a really good idea. So thank you for bringing that up. So I think that is about it. Have I covered everything? Reasonable. All right, we're ready for the bowl. Okay. So this will be who speaks first, and then we'll just move from left over. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. So the first speaker to introduce themselves is the Green Party. All right. So 3 minutes.
Hello, Etobicoke. My name is Thomas Yanuziello. I'm your MPP candidate for the Green Party of Ontario. I'd like to thank the Daily Bread Food Bank for hosting this event, and thanks as well to Lee and Farheen for attending. I won't mention Christine. Thanks to everyone in attendance here tonight and online for the opportunity to earn your votes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a hardworking Ontarian from a small village up north. As a member of the working class, I struggle to afford to rent a room here in Etobicoke while I work as an autonomous vehicle operator, which means that I maintain and test pilot self-driving commercial trucks. All I really want out of life is to live in harmony with my ecosystem. I want to live in a carbon zero home that I can afford, whether I own it or rent it. I want to grow and eat my own vegetables, drink clean water, and breathe clean air. And I don't want to have to compromise my values in order to support myself financially. But the reality is that none of these options are available to me. I can't control how buildings are constructed or how much pollution there is in my community. I can't control my employer's business practices either. It's only within the power of government to make these decisions. Yet I've watched my whole life as these other three political parties have failed to provide even these basic needs. I've lived all over the province. I grew up in Barrie. I went to the University of Windsor. I later lived in Bobcaygeon, then Gravenhurst, Midland, Niagara Falls, Milton, Oakville, and now Etobicoke. And whenever I see an election is coming, I look up who I'm going to vote for before the campaign starts so I can volunteer for that candidate. What I found this time around was devastating. I was going to show up to the polls on election day and not have a candidate to vote for who I felt best represented my interests. I couldn't let that happen, not just for myself, but for anyone in Etobicoke who truly cares about environmentalism and sustainability. As someone who's neurodiverse, I never thought politics was something that would ever be within my reach. Just sitting here in front of you all tonight, debating what I believe is best for the future of the province, is so much more than I ever thought I was capable of. I don't have any support, money, resources, connections, an office, a campaign team, or any volunteers. I don't even have the luxury of taking time off work. I managed to use a few of my vacation days, but I'm still working full time, sometimes 12-hour shifts. But I'm not complaining. The positive responses that I'm getting from our community members are keeping me going. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I would do it again in a heartbeat because it's worth fighting for what I know is right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Lee and Thomas for also coming. I'm really excited that everyone is here because this is such an important space for democracy and for you to inform yourself about who you're going to vote for. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Farheen Alim, and I am your Ontario NDP candidate here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. And my story is the day I decided to put my name forward to be Etobicoke-Lakeshore's next MPP was the day that one of my students told me that he had lost his sense of taste. So I'm a high school teacher, and I taught children as they were home alone while their parents went to work sorting boxes for Amazon. And in doing this, I really watched my students' fears turn into despondency when they realized that Doug Ford would put profits of corporations over protecting their family members who were very vulnerable and still going to work during a lockdown. During a check-in with my students one day, I learned that one of my students, every single member of his family was feeling sick, and he later ended up testing positive for COVID. This was before vaccines were readily available, before COVID was just seen as a regular part of life, and it was the direct result of government decisions that prioritize profits over people. I've witnessed the depth of unmet needs in our community and the broken model where Ford's cuts to publicly funded services, they've fallen on frontline workers like myself and others, and just regular everyday caregivers who are just trying to do their best to support vulnerable communities when they need it most, but aren't given the resources they need to succeed. This is really what has informed my politics and really spurred me to run to become the next MPP. I'm a proud resident of Etobicoke-Lakeshore, and I'm also an organizer. So I have been knocking on doors since last year and meeting my community where they're at, meeting them where their political hopes are at. And a lot of people, they see their stories in mine. I've been learning more about the needs of our community, and when the government hasn't been showing up, I've showed up for our community. In the winter, my team and I, we helped our community get access to booster shots, masks, rapid tests. We've supported community health centers and Maybell Arts, and you can trust that I'm going to continue to support community needs because I've been supporting community needs. I've been there, and I will continue doing the work and putting in the work to build a better future for everyone in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. Thank you.
Thanks, Farheen. Lee?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight and making time in your day to participate in this process. Particular thanks to the Daily Food Bank and to LAMP Community Health for supporting this evening as well. Your organizations do very important work in this community, and I just want to acknowledge and say thank you for that. I'm also pleased to be back with my two candidate colleagues who have also showed up at every debate that we've had during this election. My name is Lee Fairclough. I am your Ontario Liberal candidate for Etobicoke-Lakeshore. I've lived in the riding for over 20 years. I've been raising my two boys, Justin and Oliver, here with my husband, Benno. And we've participated in many activities in the area during that time. We've seen a lot of change during that time as well. I've spent my life, career working in healthcare. I started on the front lines at Princess Margaret Hospital many years ago, and subsequently have moved into leadership roles for over 15 years, most recently as the president of a hospital through this pandemic. During that time, I witnessed very directly the impact of cuts that we saw just prior to the pandemic. And then I also saw the impact of the lack of decision-making, the indecisiveness, and again, the clear impact that it was having for people's lives, as well as the morale of our frontline workforce. During that time, I also led the pandemic response in our region. So I went directly into long-term care homes that were in crisis to help them to manage. And on some of the topics that we'll be dealing with today, worked very closely with those that were homeless and precariously housed, with those that were supporting the shelters, to be sure that we can have a safe place to care for people, as well as meet their needs. To be honest, though, I found myself in February thinking, I don't know what we're going to do. Here we were going through another wave. Here we were making the same mistakes again. And the Ford government was only looking ahead, only denying what was happening, and only starting to focus on privatizing healthcare as well. So I felt an urgent need to step forward and bring some additional leadership to Queen's Park for us here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. It is time to win back this riding from the Conservatives, and we can do that in this election. I believe that public service is just that. It is serving all of you. And I believe it means showing up, and I think it means being sure that we're addressing all of the issues, many of the issues that we're talking about tonight. Issues of affordability, our healthcare, our health, our broader health and wellness, mental health, and of course, homelessness. I believe that our Liberal team is the progressive choice in this election, to be sure that starting day one, we can focus on these issues and make sure that we start to bring change to our community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lee. So now we've got 4 questions that we'd like to ask each of the candidates, and again, 3 minutes each. And we'll draw, I guess, for the who will start, and then we'll do the same thing going to the left. That's all right. So Farheen, you have won again. All right. So you'll start things off. So here's the question. We're all feeling it. Everybody in this room is feeling inflation. We know that the average family of 4 is spending about $1,300 a month more, or a year more, just on groceries. We can all feel it at the gas pump. And we know that affordability in the city is resulting in more and more people having to come to food banks. It's particularly felt by individuals who are on disability and those on fixed incomes. And so the question for each of you is, how will you and your party address the growing need in many communities and the rising cost of living, tackle deep poverty in Ontario, especially among those on social assistance?
Thank you. So this question is really close to me because our campaign team has many members and volunteers in key leadership positions that are actually on ODSP, and they've volunteered their time and effort to support the vision of an NDP government and electing an NDP leader here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. So I do feel a special sense of pressure to do right by these people that are helping on the campaign. I've learned a lot from them about what it's like to be living on social assistance and pretty much how it's unlivable. how the rates of ODSP and OW, they're not enough to live a life in the city. We know this is the direct result of cuts. So conservatives really cruelly cut social assistance rates in the 90s, and the Liberal government, they had 15 years, but they didn't give meaningful support or income to these people that are on social assistance. Everyone deserves access to robust social services when they need it most, whether it's because of a disability or an illness or because of job insecurity. Any person in this room, myself included, could end up on disability because you literally don't know what life throws at you. So it's really important to have a social safety net in place so that people are cared for no matter what. And the NDP does have a really strong plan to help with the social assistance program. So we have plans to double ODSP by the second year and also reform it so that nobody is living in legislative poverty. And this reform, it goes more than just throwing money at the problem, but there's a lot of core structural problems with ODSP, such as caseworkers that are overworked and don't have the resources to help the people that they're supposed to be helping. So we definitely need to reform things, but also have meaningful consultations and co-design with people that are social assistance clients. The NDP is also committed to restarting basic income the basic income pilot that was canceled by Doug Ford, and also having other innovative approaches to poverty reduction. We've also made commitments to reducing poverty by tackling the housing crisis and even expanding the social safety net by expanding OHIP so that anyone can have access to mental health services, dental services, and pharmacare, such as life-saving drugs that they might need but can't afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee.
Great, thanks very much. No, there's no question this is a very real issue in our community, and certainly, you know, as you're working through a campaign and you're talking to so many people, you hear certain themes. But I have to say today, this question really hit home because of a woman that I talked to at the door, who immediately said to me, what are you going to do for seniors? I cannot afford to live. I can't afford to buy the basic food that I need for the health condition that I have. What are you planning to do? And, you know, I think that my response to her was, first of all, you know, we definitely need to do something. It was very desperate situation that she was in. What I also thought to myself, though, is, boy, the last 4 years, nothing has been done. Nothing has been done in real ways to help people in these situations. Certainly, a Liberal team would actually take several measures to address poverty. In terms of ODSP, we certainly would raise the rate by 20%, but also, really importantly, raise the income level that people can earn before actually any of those benefits are clawed back, from $2,400 to $6,000 a month. For seniors, like the woman that I was speaking with today, it would mean an increase of $1,000 in their old age pension annually to be able to support that. We would increase the minimum wage to 16. We would also, in a similar way, reinitiate the trial of basic income. But we'd also look at trialing an adjusted minimum wage based on the cost of living that people may experience. We know it costs a whole lot more to live here in Toronto than it does to live up in the small community I grew up with when I was a little girl in Southampton. Very different, right? The types of costs that people will experience. Beyond that, though, we have a 19-point plan to address affordability. And this includes things anywhere from our Bucka Ride province-wide so that people can access the transit more at a less costly way, had the added benefit to the environment of getting 400,000 cars off the road. We certainly also would be reducing some of the tax on prepared foods, and of course, making the child discounts retroactive, giving parents back some of the daycare costs that they have missed and that has been stolen from them by the Ford government with their late negotiation of the daycare deal. Finally, I think another example on that is to reintroduce rent control and new options for people to support people with their housing needs. Beyond that, though, we will need to consider the programs and support that help people in the most trying times. I've only listed a few of the 19 things on affordability, But I also think about even our hosts tonight. You know, how do we make sure that some of those programs are there for people when they're going to need them most? And some of that includes the ways that governments can support that. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Lee. And Thomas.
I'm well aware of the fact that many Ontarians on social assistance are so full of despair that they are applying for medical assistance in dying to escape their hopeless circumstances. I have met with them online, I've heard their stories, and the reality of this is heart-wrenching. I had an interview with a group called Canadians with Disabilities and their allies where we discussed the problems people with disabilities are facing and the solutions government can provide. The Green Party is the only party which has committed to doubling ODSP immediately, not expecting people to wait until next year, which will lift all people with disabilities out of legislated poverty. By reinstating rent control, we will make sure that this money stays in the hands of people with disabilities, not their landlords. We will also reduce the clawbacks so people with disabilities who want to work can if they so choose, giving them their dignity back, giving their lives meaning, and allowing them the freedom to improve their situations. The Green Party will restore the goal of ending homelessness in Ontario within 10 years. Utilizing a housing first model, we will ensure that stable, permanent housing solutions are the first priority when helping those in need. We will build 60,000 permanent supportive housing units over the next decade through innovative partnerships with public, private, and nonprofit housing organizations. These supportive homes will have a wraparound support programs like access to mental health and addiction services to help keep everyone housed. We will dedicate 10% of those homes to people with complex care needs. Once we have our society's most vulnerable housed and taken care of, the Green Party will phase in a universal basic income, starting with people on social assistance and home caregivers who are currently unpaid for the work that they are doing to support their families and their communities. The pilot programs have been done, the data is in, and all the experts are in agreement that a universal basic income is the best way forward for our economy. If you think a universal basic income would be too expensive, the reality is that keeping people in poverty is more expensive. Our current social assistance programs are inefficient, full of unnecessary red tape and reporting requirements. Plus, poverty leads to increases in crime rates and poor health outcomes, creating additional costs and burdens on our justice and healthcare systems. By lifting everyone out of poverty, we create financially stable taxpayers who will spend their money on goods and services in their communities, start small businesses, and pursue their passions. We live in the wealthiest province in one of the top wealthiest countries in the world. There is no reason why anyone should be living in poverty. We have the resources to do it, so it's time to put an end to homelessness and poverty in the province of Ontario. Thank you.
That was kind of perfect timing. Thank you. So the next question is about affordable housing, and Lee, we're going to have you start this round off, and then again we'll just move to our left in terms of responses. So the Daily Bread Food Bank and LAMP are committed to evidence-based research that informs our policies that we advocate for. And we recently commissioned a study out of the University of Calgary, which looked at changes to rent and what the effects would be on the population. And sadly, one of the conclusions was that a $30 a month increase in rent would result in 73,000 more visits to food banks across Toronto on an annual basis. Each of your platforms speaks to housing and building and the development of decent, affordable housing. And so this is your opportunity to be able to talk about how you will change the city by providing deeply affordable housing that is scarce and disappearing. What will you do to address this?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. And there's no question that housing prices are absolutely skyrocketing, and there's actually no clear plan in place with the current government for how we might actually rein it in. Today alone, I heard, again, so many people that are worried about their ability to pay the rent and to ever be able to afford a home. A man yesterday suggested maybe it was time for him to just leave Ontario because he doesn't see a path to be able to afford a home at any time. This is really worrying and a result of unchecked policy that has allowed the very rich to get richer while our communities have suffered, denying the ability for families and others to develop the kind of home that they would want. In our plan, we will build 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years, including 78,000 new social and community homes, 38,000 supportive housing, and 22,000 new homes for Indigenous peoples. We'll also establish the Ontario Home Building Corporation to finance and build those affordable homes and make sure that we meet those targets and make sure that the investments are going to the right places. We'll also introduce some new options around rent to own as well. Again, trying to create this path that people can see their ability to ownership. We'll also make sure that we're addressing some of the causes of these rising housing costs. We really need to rein things in. So reining in corporate speculation, holding on to properties and not developing, and if they're not developing, that have a use it or lose it type framework that makes sure that those properties become available to people. We'll increase the tax on foreign investment in properties, and we'll implement open bidding processes so there's increased transparency around the process of purchasing a home at a very, very minimum. But I think this question really was focused on making sure that this will be accessible to those that are most in need. And I think some of the ways that we will do that through investment in homes and making sure that we've got not just the homes, but the mix of services that need to surround those homes to create the kind of robust communities that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And so if we could turn to Thomas, please.
The Green Party's housing strategy has been described as a masterclass in housing policy. When compared with the housing strategies of the other parties by independent bodies, it always comes out on top. The Green Party will build affordable housing and protect our existing housing affordable supply. We will build 182,000 new permanently affordable community housing rental homes over the next decade, including the 60,000 permanent supportive homes I mentioned earlier. We will mandate inclusionary zoning and require a minimum of 20% affordable units in all housing projects above a certain size. We will create a seed fund for cooperative housing through direct funding and mortgage support. We will renew 260,000 community housing rental homes over the next decade in partnership with the federal government under the National Housing Strategy. The Green Party will provide nonprofit housing providers with the support and access to the capital needed to purchase rental buildings, to maintain affordability in perpetuity, and explore preemptive right to buy for nonprofits. We will partner with nonprofits, co-ops, and community land trusts to use public land for permanently affordable rental housing and attainable home ownership options through low-cost, long-term leases. We will prioritize and speed up the development approval process for projects led by or in partnership with nonprofit housing providers and provide low-interest loans via a new revolving fund. The Green Party will provide security and support for renters by reinstating rent controls on all units to regulate rental increases year to year and implement vacancy control to limit rent increases between tenancies. We will extend financial support to 311,000 Ontario households via the Portable Housing Benefit. We will establish a clear system for above-guideline rent increases that governs which renovations are necessary and can qualify for an increase in rent. The Green Party will update and strengthen sections of the Residential Tenancies Act that deal with the state of repair for multi-unit buildings to ensure tenants have homes that are safe. We will strengthen rules and penalties for rent evictions and bad faith evictions to keep apartments affordable. We will increase funding for the Landlord and Tenant Board to hire additional adjudicators, add transparency to the appointment process, and eliminate forced online hearings. This will help address delays so that both landlords and tenants have timely access to justice. Studies have shown that nobody should be spending more than 30% of their income on housing. It's time we stop treating housing as a stock on Wall Street and start treating it as a vital resource that we all need to live. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. And I think we'll turn to Farheen.
Thank you. So Housing is probably the number one issue I hear when I'm knocking on the doors. So many people have mentioned that rent is just out of control, unaffordable, and so many renters in our community are also really feeling a sense of insecurity that they might get evicted, or that their rents might go up, or that their landlords might do a renoviction where they claim that they're renovating the building and then they get evicted as well. So it is so important that people have a place to live and can afford a place to live. What we know about the housing crisis is that it's a direct result of policy decisions made by the government. Doug Ford canceled rent control, and he also canceled inclusionary zoning laws that would allow new buildings to have affordable housing units. The Liberals, when they were in government, they created above guideline increases, which are pretty much allow landlords to ignore properties for many, many years and then suddenly hike up rents above the rate of inflation, whereas people's wages are not being raised by that. So for a nurse whose wages are now capped because of Bill 124 and their wages are only being raised by 1%, they can't afford to live in a place where the rents are being hiked up 10% or things like that. So the NDP has a really strong policy that is housing first. And we have a policy to build 1.5 million new housing units. 250,000 of them will be affordable, non-market rental constructions. But this issue, it's not just about supply. We also desperately need real rent control. And unlike what other parties have proposed, the NDP has a plan for vacancy rent control, which means that when one tenant moves out, the new tenant will be paying the same price. That means landlords can't hike up rents between tenancies, and that they'll actually be discouraged from doing things like renovictions. We also have a plan to invest in social housing and end chronic homelessness within 10 years, because this is an issue that's also really plaguing our community. We'll do this by increasing funding for permanent and transitional housing and making sure that this housing is both safe and secure. The NDP has said over and over and over again as official opposition that housing is a human right. You've seen other NDP MPPs as official opposition speak out about the housing policies that have existed, and you can depend on me to do the same if I were elected as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee? Sorry, you were the first answer. We're going to switch things over to employment now. Oh, sorry, Lee, you didn't. No, I didn't. Sorry, heat, clearly heat exhaustion. All right. Yeah, no, that's all absolutely on me. We're going to switch things over to employment. Each of the party platforms seeks to build economic and social resilience in Ontario. Yet we know, as many reports have shown, that employment is often precarious or underpaid. How will you and your party guarantee that those who work full-time, full year, are not below the poverty line? So this one, I think we're starting off with Thomas. I got that one right. Please.
Your question, like my opponent's policies, doesn't go far enough. You asked how my party will guarantee that full-time workers are not below the poverty line. The Green Party will eliminate poverty for everyone. We are committed to improving workers' rights and wages by increasing the floor of the minimum wage each year by $1, starting at $16 in 2022, with a top-up in cities where the cost of living is higher. We will increase the number of provincially legislated paid sick days from 3 to 10 and provide small businesses financial support to fund the program. We will ban employers from requiring a sick note from a medical practitioner when an employee is ill. We will restore and improve workers' rights to collective bargaining and immediately repeal Bill 124, which is currently capping public sector workers' wages at 1%, and the problematic sections of Bill 106. We will provide all workers with a full and equal access to employment rights and benefits programs like EI, CPP, and WSIB, as well as equal pay for equal work, regardless of whether the employee is permanent, part-time, temporary, or casual. We will immediately end the practice of deeming, whereby the WSIB unfairly cuts benefits for workers. We will review the Pension Benefit Act to ensure 100% coverage of defined benefit pensions by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Fund in an involuntary pension plan wind-up. The Green Party will strengthen rights and protections for gig and temp workers by implementing a Gig Workers Bill of Rights, which will include protecting gig workers and ending the misclassification of employees, enacting a presumption of employee status and the ABC test under the Employment Standards Act. We will ensure payment for all hours of work from app sign in to sign out, with clear and concise breakdown of how pay is calculated, ensuring gig workers' real wages are not reduced below the minimum wage, compensating for necessary work-related expenses, and we will make gig work count towards permanent residency applications. We will close the loopholes that can lead to precarious work, including stricter regulations relating to the temp agency industry. We will mandate that temp agency workers earn the same as directly hired workers when they do the same work, and that temp workers must become full hired employees after 3 months. We will develop a program of portable extended health benefits for workers in the gig economy, retail, and hospitality sectors that is tied to the employee even if they were to change employment. In combination with all of these measures, as well as our universal basic income, we seek to give bargaining power back to workers. We want the people of Ontario to feel safe denying work that is dangerous, unfair, or compromises their values. Thank you.
Great. I won't screw this one up. Farheen, you're up next.
Nice. Okay. Thank you. So the pandemic has really exposed all these inequalities in our society and how deeply entrenched they are. And I think workers' rights is a huge one that was exposed because there were so many different classes of workers, some who were able to stay at home, some who had to be on the front lines and were deemed essential. And so many of these workers weren't given the proper supports to stay safe. As I mentioned in my opening story, a lot of my students' families weren't given paid sick days, and this caused so many people in our community to get COVID. But a lot of my students' families are immigrants and refugees. I teach English as a second language, so my students are newcomers to Canada, and a lot of them who are working as well as their parents, they're newcomers and they don't want to make waves, they don't want to ask for too much, but it's unfair for them to be going to work and not receiving the benefits that they need to improve their quality of life. We've seen that Doug Ford is not a friend to workers. He canceled minimum wage and froze workers' wages for 3 years. And the Liberals had 15 years to support workers as well, but they only announced increases to the minimum wage before an election, and they also refused to give an adequate number of paid sick days. The NDP is different from these two parties. We do have a commitment to raise minimum wage to $20 over 4 years. We have a plan to give 2 rounds of COVID support to small businesses to help them because they've really been impacted by the pandemic as well, and give 10 permanent sick days to all Ontarians, as well as a basket of benefits, which they've called Ontario benefits, that's the name of it, which are going to follow the worker, not the job. So that means that all workers, including gig workers, part-time temp workers, they're going to have a basket of benefits like paid sick days, access to eye care, access to pharmacare, mental health care, dental benefits, things like this that are going to improve their quality of life, but they'll have it no matter where they go in their job. We also have a plan to enforce and strengthen employment law because even though the inequalities were exposed during the pandemic, a lot of them were really deeply entrenched. And these are systemic issues like racism, sexism, homophobia. So we definitely need to be advocating for these communities who've experienced injustice and help them have the access to the supports and services that they need. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Lee.
Thank you. Again, a really important topic. And I think the question was really, it had 2 parts, which was how would you and how would your party guarantee action on this? And I think in terms of how I would, it's by working closely with the community, understanding firsthand and what people are facing and what is going to be important to be sure that we action within the platform that could relate to our community here. In terms of the Liberal plan in this area, again, we certainly would have a minimum wage increase. We would reestablish some of the basic income pilots that were stopped under the Ford government and reestablish those again. No question, through COVID, we learned the importance of sick days. And so we do have a program in mind for how we can actually institute 10 paid sick days for all workers. We need to recognize that we need to work with employers on how that is introduced as well. But we certainly have learned the importance of it. Certainly we saw many patients that came to hospital because we didn't have policies in place to support them in taking that time off as well. We would ban unfair and unpaid gig and contract work. Really, we're looking for equal pay for equal work and protections for all on-call workers. And again, relating this to my own area in healthcare, the same would be true as we looked at PSWs that would be working in different areas, making sure that the pay increases to $25 an hour are maintained for PSWs, and looking for some level of parity around salaries in different healthcare work environments. No question, Bill 124 should have been repealed. Our workforce, the state of the workforce, the state of the amount of care that we needed to be able to provide, now the huge backlogs in care that we've got in healthcare, we need to repeal that bill immediately so that we can actually start bringing back and recruiting some of the talent that we need in some of these really important areas. I also just wanted to speak a little bit about workplace safety too, because I think that Ford has scrapped some of the basic common sense protections that we have had in place, and it's time to be sure that we can reintroduce them. Beyond that, though, again, I do just, because the question is making sure that people are not below the poverty line, I do just want to remind on our 19-point plan on affordability, because again, all of these things combined with some of these areas around income, et cetera, are going to be what's going to make it manageable for people. Finally, we're also introducing new costs in this plan. And so I think it's really important, and I'm very proud that the Liberal plan was released, and it was costed when we released it, because it also has the new taxes that would be introduced on the very wealthy and the most prosperous business as well, that are going to help us to be sure that we can afford some of these other things as well. Thank you. Just missed the gong.
Thanks, Lee. And Farheen's going to kick off this response first. So we're going to, our final question is about healthcare. And so here's a little bit of background. The pandemic has revealed many gaps in our healthcare system. Issues with long-term care, a shortage of nurses and physicians, a lack of needed mental health services and supports, access issues, hallway medicine, and much more. So here's the question, and it's a long one. How would your party invest in resources like community health centers and home care health services, which play an integral role in caring for communities and some of our most vulnerable community members?
So the pandemic really, again, about the pandemic really exposed just how deeply broken our healthcare system and our seniors care system are. And some of the most vulnerable victims of the pandemic were the more than 4,000 seniors who died during COVID-19 outbreaks in long-term care homes, who died in horrifying conditions. And this is absolutely shameful. So I really hope that we all remember those victims, as well as make sure that this election is about how we treat our most vulnerable people. In my culture, I know we talk a lot about building up the next generation, but in my culture, we also have a deep reverence for our elders, which I'm sure a lot of other people in other cultures have as well. And our elders, our seniors, they deserve so much better than the decades of underfunding that has happened in favor of profits in long-term care. The NDP has advocated for better seniors care since 2015 and will continue to do so. We have a plan to have investments that allow seniors to age in place and really take the profits out of the long-term care system. Because when profits are involved, companies, they care more about saving money than actually giving proper care to people. We also have a plan to overhaul the whole long-term care system and make it focus on quality of life as well. So creating provincial standards of home care and community care services that are implemented province-wide so that our elders can have access to high quality care that they deserve. This also means really investing in PSWs, personal support workers, who are taking care of our elders. I know so many people that I've talked to at the doors, they just go on and on about how much they adore their personal support worker and how their personal support workers need to be treated better because some of them are working in multiple homes and don't have the ability to really focus on giving specific care. So the NDP is invested in hiring more personal support workers, really investing in that industry, but also training them so that they can provide good quality service, including culturally responsive service, which a lot of different elders need. And also investing in healthcare and community health centers is a part of this plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and Lee.
Thank you, and what an important question again. So this really is one of the very reasons I've decided to run. We need to make some fundamental changes in our health system, and we need to make it for the better. And we need to stop the privatization of our health system that is happening right in front of us, the very active erosion of our public health system. I believe that community-based primary care is so critical to people's health, but it's actually also critical to the way that we succeed as a society, and it's at the root, actually, of a thriving economy. All the evidence will say that. When I worked as a hospital leader, I realized more than anything that my most important partners were going to be those that were actively working in the community, those working in long-term care homes, those that are providing primary care, and that it was a partnership around that was focused on patients and what patients needed. We need to be really thinking about this differently. Yes, there were a lot of things exposed to the pandemic, and now it's time to fill in the cracks. That's what we need to do. So certainly a Liberal plan would look at, first of all, supporting more seniors at home, adding additional services for 400,000 seniors, and also including the mix of services that would be available to people. And I think that from what I can hear at the doors, from people, that would be really important. Secondly, long-term care. We're going to move by 2028, we're going to phase out for-profit long-term care. So we can focus on the care and not the profits, and ensure those that do require long-term care get the kind of care that they need. Again, let's re-examine not just creating basic minimums for hours of care, but what's the experience for people that are in need of that care, and is it meeting the complexity of the care that they need? In terms of organizations like CHCs, we're committed to funding an additional new 15 CHCs in the province. I personally have been on the board of CHCs for several years. I believe in the model that is not just about the delivery of healthcare services, but the broader determinants of health, and certainly a Liberal plan will be sure that we focus on that. We've also focused on repealing Bill 124 already earlier in this, but this will be critical. And we cannot forget the backlog of services that people are needing in healthcare. That has to be a partnership between primary care and acute care to be sure we're actively diagnosing people and making sure that we're investing $1 billion to actually do the catch up in services that we need. Really critically, though, is the $3 billion that we will invest in mental health. There's no question that we've had hollow commitments from the Ford government in this area. We've only seen a rise, actually really troubling rises, in the need for very acute mental health services. I saw it in our own emergency department, overdose deaths, and some of the very basic needs for mental health care. And we need to act on it, and we need to act now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Thomas?
The Green Party is committed to improving home care by increasing funding to home care services by 20%, so that people can safely stay in their homes longer. We will create a standard basket of core home care services that providers must make consistently available across the province. We will shift to entirely nonprofit home care providers within the public system. We will provide team coordinators as a single access point within family health teams to ensure care is consistent with patient needs. We will mandate that personal support workers are paid a minimum of $25 an hour and for their travel time between visits. We will increase high-quality home care options for those experiencing frailty, dementia, and disability. We will collect meaningful quality indicators to hold home care organizations accountable and to promote quality improvements. We will pilot a support program as part of our basic income phase-in for those doing unpaid caregiving and in families and communities. The Green Party will expand options for our elders to age in place. We will make it easier for seniors to live together by streamlining and simplifying the approvals process for co-housing and co-living developments. We will repeal laws that would prohibit and create barriers to co-housing and co-living. We will increase support for community centers and neighborhood coalitions, which play an important role in encouraging community connections and reducing isolation for elders. We will create incentives for retrofitting homes to make them safer and easier to age in place. What sets the Green Party apart is our focus on prevention in our healthcare system. We will partner with the federal government to implement universal dental and pharmacare programs. We will increase upstream investments in the social determinants of health, such as social isolation, housing insecurity, and poverty to prevent substantial long-term healthcare costs and severe diseases. We will support and promote healthy behaviors to prevent disease and reduce risk factors such as poor nutrition and smoking. These early investments will lead to better long-term health outcomes and reduce stress on the system. We will improve environmental determinants of health by prioritizing clean air, clean water, and access to local food in all communities. Through all of these measures, we seek to keep our elders in good health in their communities where they can contribute their knowledge for the betterment of our society. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move to the audience questions, and we're going to start off with the first one has come from online and the viewers at home, and so with this we are going to ask Lee to start off the answers. Now we're shortening the time frame; it's no longer 3 minutes. We are going to follow the practice of the board of directors here at Daily Bread, which is to ask you to be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. So these are just 90-second responses, okay? So the first one is again coming from our YouTube channel. The individual has said, "I'm a non-binary, neurodivergent person of color living on ODSP. The pandemic has obliterated my sanity, and the only place I can access mental health counseling without pain is at the emergency department on a one-time basis. Does this sound familiar to you? What do you intend to do to address the problems of others like me in similarly difficult situations?"
Yeah, thank you for the question. And you're right, this is a very recognizable situation. And I think through the pandemic, we've only seen the number of people that are accessing mental health services for the first time in emergency rooms go up. And so, again, when I come back to what we need to do about it, we need to invest in mental health services in a very real way. And it needs to be an expansion of the services that are actually available to people. We need to ensure that those can be accessed easily and in the community, and actually address some of it further upstream, as well as recognizing that there are many that are in need of acute mental health services, particularly our youth, and that we have a deficit in the capacity to be able to deliver on those services. We also need to make it easy for you to be able to access that. We need to ensure that those that may be in a position of access points, some of our community centers and hubs are natural places for that, working with family physicians and others to be sure that that is very, very accessible to you. But I only just want to say this is an area I feel passionate about, that we need to really focus on making sure the services expand. There's been a lot of lip service given to doing that the last 4 years, and we need to make it happen.
Thank you, and Thomas.
I am very proud of the Green Party's platform on mental health. It is one of our 3 main focuses in our platform. We are committed to making the investments needed to increase mental health spending, but to 10% of Ontario's healthcare budget. We will include mental health and addiction care under OHIP by offering services provided by psychotherapists, psychologists, social workers, and other regulated professionals. We'll provide an immediate base budget increase of 8% to community mental health sector to increase access to publicly funded care. We will expand access to publicly funded mental health and addiction treatment beds to reduce or eliminate the need for expensive private care. We will fully integrate mental health and addiction services into expanded family health teams and walk-in clinics to improve early intervention, including mental health and substance use as part of regular checkups. We also have a very big problem with youth access to mental health, and the Green Party is the only party committed to reducing wait times for youth access to mental health services to less than 30 days, some of which are currently over 2 years to access these services. Thank you.
Great, Farheen.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I learned that 1 in 4 Ontarians sought out mental health supports during the pandemic, and 1 in 4 means many people in this room, myself included, and I know so many of my students as well. I've seen their struggles with mental health, with learning online and being disconnected from community. So I'm really excited that all 3 parties that are on stage right now have mentioned a commitment to mental health. I will note that the NDP, we have a plan to have universal mental health care. So that means that it's included as a part of OHIP. You don't have to pay out of pocket, because right now, therapists, an hour session with a therapist costs $160, which is so inaccessible for so many groups. But our investments in mental health care, it's not just to make it accessible financially, but also to make it responding to people's needs. So the person who asked the question, they mentioned that they're non-binary, that they're a person of color. We need to have mental health services that address these needs specifically, because mental health services are not just one size fits all for a white person. We need culturally responsive things that respond to issues unique to the queer community as well as people of color. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think we're going to have a live question. So thank you for the change to format. I think this is where it's about community, and I'm grateful that you're going to ask the question live.
I respect this bunch too. I'm often on that end. Okay, let's talk about proportional representation. Because come the second, unfortunately, I don't think none of your parties will form a government. You don't want to say that in the days before an election. But what we're dealing with is an incredibly poor democracy. I mean, there can always be improvements to democracy. A large number of countries in the world have some sort of proportional representation. When the Liberals were in, didn't do it. When the federal Liberals went in 2015, on a promise of doing it, didn't do it. Because when in Canada, with first past the post, especially when a majority happens, those people are not going to implement proportional representation. Why share governing with the other parties? So the 3 of you are representing your parties beautifully, many good points, like the gig point in particular. I will remind the Liberal candidate, the privatization was on your agenda back in the day, so I hope that the Liberals have changed. So what I would like the 3 candidates to talk about is, what are you going to do in your party about presenting proportional representation within my lifetime? And I'm only 65, but still. And the pundits say, or the academics say, oh, Canada's not going to do it. Well, the States don't do it. The UK doesn't do it. France doesn't do it. But guess what? Australia has done it, and they have a decent government for once in place. So come the second, you're going to have a Ford government on a minority of voters. Again, my whole life I've watched this. Okay? And so this has got to change, and you have to have, your parties all have to have a timeline. You have to talk about the mechanism of this. How does this happen? Because the other parties need to be involved as well. Okay.
So thank you for the question. So proportional representation, and I think Lee, you're going to start us off with it. Or sorry, Thomas is starting us off.
Thank you very much for this question. I believe that this is the biggest barrier to progress in our province. And let's talk about timelines here. If the Liberals are able to form government in this election, they will not implement proportional representation. And in the next election, we are back to Conservatives. Thank you. The Green Party and the NDP both support proportional representation. We are not just lying to your faces like the Liberals have in the past. We are going to get it done. So if you are for progress for the province of Ontario, you must elect Greens and NDPs into our parliament. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. And Farheen.
I was so excited by this question because I am very much a proportional representation nerd in terms of electoral reform. So many voters like yourself are afraid of Doug Ford and are voting from a place of fear, which is not what democracy is about. I've lived in countries that have proportional representation systems. I've lived in New Zealand that has a mixed member proportional representation system, and I've seen that system work. It reduces polarization in politics because every single person's vote matters. Nobody has to think, oh, I don't really like this candidate, but I'm going to vote for them anyways because I hate the other one more. You can vote with your heart. You can vote with what you want. And the NDP has made a commitment to having mixed member proportional representation as a form of electoral reform with a citizens' assembly helping design that. So mixed member proportional representation, it's the same system they have in New Zealand. How it works is you have a vote for someone in your riding, but you also have a party vote. So for example, if 10% of people across Ontario vote Green, that means 10% of the Legislative Assembly will be Green or NDP or Liberal or Conservative or whatever. And it really is what we need to progress, like our other candidates have said. It's the current system is just favoring the status quo, so we can't have it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lee?
Thanks for the question. And again, I appreciate the conversation that we're having about it and the fact that, different models exist in different places around the world. The Liberal approach would be as a first step to move to a ranked ballot as an option, which we see as a step forward to be able to get some level of reform in this area. I guess the only thing I would say though is that we are where we are today. And this is a really important election. And again, if I go back to my own reasons to step forward and leave something behind that I love doing, which was working in healthcare, is to step forward to do this is because we actually can't allow this to happen in the same way. This is our current system. We need to vote in the way that's going to actually be sure that we limit the ability of Ford. Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, I'll go back to the Liberals have indicated that our interest would be to move to a ranked ballot process as a first step to be able to move to electoral reform. Yeah. Yeah, ideally in the next term, if we can, to start taking the measures to really move to some reforms in this area and not stay in the status quo. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I think we'll do you have a question from the audience? All right, so come on up.
I'm sorry, but some of us, I know online has added questions, and some of us has added over there. So I think you should do like a circular, one online, one submitted, one. I think that's what it is.
Sure, I can do that. I was just, somebody was here, and so I thought I would do that. But yeah, all right. So we'll go to an online question, and so the online question is around shelter in Etobicoke, specifically. Homelessness is an increasingly persistent issue. What would you do to address homelessness in South Etobicoke?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, the NDP does have a plan to end chronic homelessness within 10 years by increasing funding for permanent and transitional housing that's both safe and secure. There's already so many issues with homeless shelters where for a number of reasons, people don't want to stay at those shelters because they don't feel included or they don't feel safe there. So we need to have a range of options available for people so that they have housing, because that is a basic need that you need to have before being able to better yourself in other ways. So we have a housing first policy, and that includes ending chronic homelessness within 10 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Farheen. Lean?
Yeah, the first thing to say is that I think it will be important to continue to understand what the current state of homelessness is in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. And I think it's been great to hear about some of the important work that is being done so that we can understand that. We too have commitments to ending chronic homelessness as well, taking a housing first approach to how we can do that. But I also think, and certainly from the experience that I had in the community that I was last in, is how are we supporting people and meeting them where they're at as well? What are their interests? What are their desires? And often homelessness is also linked to other needs that people may have, whether it be mental health, whether it's not always, but sometimes, whether it relates to substance use disorder as well. And how do we actually think holistically about how we're supporting people to address some of those needs? And certainly in our plan, we see important ways that we can support people differently. Too often, I think that people move down a track of potentially being criminalized when actually what we really need is better health support. So certainly in our plan, we're going to support the partnering of mental health workers with the police so that we can actually support people, getting people to the right place for care that they may need. But really critically, and I think coming back to housing, is ensuring that that affordable housing is available for people and that we're making sure that it happens here in Etobicoke-Lakeshore.
Thank you. And Thomas?
We're all in agreement on the housing first approach. I don't want to repeat the points that my opponents have made, but the Green Party also is going to provide additional funding to municipalities to help ease the burden of shelter costs, as well as have a focus on women's shelters and also provide funding for Indigenous owned and operated shelters, as well as affordable homes. I know that Farheen already mentioned that they would build Indigenous affordable housing, but our model actually gives ownership and operation to the Indigenous people. So it's built by them, for them. We just provide the money. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now we'll go to our live question. And just as we do that, there's been a couple of opportunities to shout something out. And as much as we're family, would love to have you not shout out things as we carry on through this awesome opportunity in democracy. So, your question.
Thank you so much. My name's Amber Morley. Nice to see you all, and thank you so much for being here. This is not my first debate, I'll have to admit. I got to see you all on Zoom previously. And I just wanted to echo the sentiments of the woman ahead of me around proportional voting and reform around our voting process. It is critically important because we continue to see folks who don't even show up to our debates or, continue to be elected in power. And for those of us working hard in community, I can't think of a more frustrating situation. So I just wanted to really double down on that. We really need some reform. But my question to you, and congratulations on campaigning for the last number of weeks and 48 hours to go. What was the most inspiring thing that you have come across in your race as a candidate for us in Etobicoke-Lakeshore? Thank you.
What a great question. Thank you. Lee's going to kick this off.
To me, I think the most inspiring is how thoughtful people are being about this election. I think that the last couple of years, we've realized that governments do impact our lives, that the decisions that they make are important decisions. They matter to us. And so I think, what I have really enjoyed is the kind of discussions that we can get into when we are talking at the doors in those moments, and people's commitment to go back and make sure that they're doing some research, probably a different level of engagement than I've seen, for many, many years.
Thank you, Thomas.
Like I said in my introduction, I never thought that I would ever be able to do this, and it is the most terrifying thing for me to even be talking to you right now. So what's most inspiring to me is just the overwhelming positive feedback that I keep getting from everyone I talk to, from Mike's performance in the leaders debate, as well as my performance in our debates, and how the green platform is just really hitting all the right issues perfectly. All the people who are telling me that they're voting for me, it's just, like I said, overwhelming. I just want to go home and cry happy tears every night. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas and Farheen.
So I always tell my students, politics needs more people like you. Politics needs more diverse voices. They need people that are teachers, healthcare workers, autonomous vehicle drivers. I forgot for a second. Like nurses, bus drivers, people from diverse experiences, because nobody will understand your experience and be able to represent you like someone who has that experience. So I always tell my students, politics needs more people like you. You need to run, you need to get involved, things like that. And it has been so inspiring to me to see how diverse our campaign team is and how so many young people specifically have gotten engaged in our campaign and in the election at large. Like my campaign team has 2 grade 8 students that just emailed Etobicoke-Lakeshore NDP and said, we want to get involved and volunteer. And they're our most enthusiastic volunteers. Like when I am done my 8-hour shift of knocking on doors, they are still at it with the energy needed. And it's really powerful for them to be sharing their stories as well at the doors and telling adults who are able to vote how they would like the future government to be, because a lot of government decisions impact people like them. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the next question comes from Hannah online. Prior to the last provincial election, all parties committed to increasing funding to Legal Aid Ontario. After the election, Ford reneged on the promise and slashed funding by 30%. Will you commit to increasing funding to Legal Aid Ontario in keeping with what was promised prior to the last provincial election? Right, and I think Thomas is starting us off on this one.
Yes. We will restore adequate funding to legal aid by boosting their base budget and develop a long-term, structurally stable funding plan. Thank you.
To answer it briefly, yes, we have committed to reversing the cuts that have been made to Legal Aid Ontario, but also to expanding it more. A lot of community aid clinics, they need to be transformed into accessible spaces so that people who require access to justice have them and feel safe and comfortable approaching community legal aid centers. And also, we need to also do more around education, because as I mentioned, a lot of the families that I work with that are newcomers, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to raise their voices too much, but they need to know their rights and they need to know that the community has their back and that these resources exist for them. So not just reversing the cuts, but also expanding access as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lee?
I think that the kind of services that we see in organizations like Legal Aid and others are going to be even more important over the next several years. And certainly our government has made commitments to ensuring that those types of services are available. I also think about some of the other areas that we've been discussing around housing, et cetera, the landlord-tenant board, making sure that there's going to be reforms there. And all of these processes need the kind of supports of agencies like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you heading up for a question? Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you.
Is it okay if I?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. So hopefully I don't have 90 seconds. No? Can I?
Maybe not a speech, but a question would be
No
great.
question. Hi. So I have this beautiful sticker, and I'm not a voter. I'm first time voter. so yes, as Canadian citizen, it would be my first time, and I hope you will fight for my vote. Okay. So my question is,
I wanna tell a little story before I will ask. Yeah. Um, so the world issue right now is Ukraine. Ukraine. I'm Ukrainian. I brought my family here, 6 members of Ukraine, and they live with me right now in apartment. So, and we found out that Canada brought these families and didn't think about how they will live. So we apply for assistance, social assistance, and we get for 2 months, we get only $360 for 2 months per person. Also, I went with them to a job assistant, and they are not allowed to do trainings for free, job trainings for free. So I have to pay for the transportation for them. I have to pay for a phone bill for them. I have to fund for them some rent right now. So I have to save my money. I am a student and I need only 1 more year to study for my degree. And I don't know how I will live in that small amount that I have and support my family. So also, we recognize that we try to rent a house for them, but we need a letter from employment, bank statement with their funds, and also we have to be in a waiting list for 3 months. So right now, we apply for job. It would take like a few months. Also, we will be in a waiting list for 3 months. So it means I have to support these family members for about 6 months or maybe more. So as your party gonna do some funds, some programs, something for these Ukrainians, because as a community development student, I recognize that Canada needs more young families here. They are potential taxpayers. They are potential Canadian citizens. So just help. Just help.
Thank you for what you've done, and your support for your family. It's remarkable. So I think Farheen is going to start this one off.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story and thank you for supporting your family from abroad. I have a lot of students I mentioned that are newcomers, and a lot of them are also refugees that are new to Canada. And I've seen the culture shock, the difficulty that it takes to adjust to a new country and to be so far from home. So just first off, thank you for being such an angel to your family and supporting them. And you definitely do need more assistance from the government. You need a government that listens to you and cares and will provide services that support newcomers, because we're welcoming them into this country. We need to help give them supports to be successful. There's a lot of, so the NDP has a lot of commitments to supporting already existing community services like language instructional newcomer centers that are all over the GTA, but also to just make life easier in terms of affordable housing. And I noticed that you mentioned that you're a student. We also have a post-secondary plan to transition Osap loans into grants, because you're trying to better yourself in your program and you shouldn't have to be weighed down by the challenges of not being able to afford your education and then also supporting these others. So I'm sorry that you're going through this, and I really hope we get to elect a government that cares and is able to help fight for you.
Thank you. Lee?
And thank you for your question as well and sharing the experience that you're going through. I think that a lot of the programs that we need to have in place to support newcomers requires a really important partnership as well between the provincial government and the federal government, and an understanding of how those programs can work in concert to support people that are coming to settle in the country. And so, I think about some of the other services that we would want to make sure are available. We've talked about some of the ways that we can make it more affordable, but more specifically around the healthcare needs, education needs. These are the things that we need to make sure are available to people and really are very much within the purview of a provincial government as well. But it is a partnership. It's usually a partnership, actually a three-way partnership between the federal government, the provincial government, and municipal governments for all the kinds of programming that we need and need to be able to sustain to address your issues. So thanks very much for raising them.
Great, thank you. And Thomas?
We absolutely do need better support for newcomers to our province. And like my opponents have already said, we need to work better. We need better cooperation between provincial and federal levels of government to make that happen. And like I've said in other questions, the Green Party doesn't want anyone struggling in poverty ever again. So we're going to make sure that we institute rent control and universal basic income and all the other measures in our platform to make sure that we put a stop to that. I'd also like to take an opportunity to point out how reckless the federal Liberals were in their attempt to use the war as an opportunity to gain good publicity, pulling out all the stops in the immigration program, putting every other country on hold while they invited everyone from Ukraine into Canada without a proper plan in place to support them. There are other wars waging around the world, and I feel like they have done a disservice by just completely ignoring the rest of the world in favor of using Ukraine as a publicity stunt. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. This is going to be the last question that we have tonight, and Lee's going to start it off. And the question is, what's awesome about the candidate on your right-hand side?
So I've only met Farheen probably through all of these debates, and then when we've been running into each other at different places all around the riding through this. And I think what is awesome about Farheen is that it's clear she's very committed to this community, that she has a lot of energy that she is bringing to her campaign, and that she genuinely cares about the issues in Etobicoke-Lakeshore. So I've been impressed with your energy and your enthusiasm, Farheen.
And about Thomas.
Ooh, so Thomas, oh my goodness. I'm really impressed with Thomas because, as he mentioned, he doesn't have a massive team to support him as a Green candidate. He doesn't have a campaign office or a manager or things like that. So it really goes to show you how strong his campaign is to have been able to do what he's done. I also think it's really inspiring that you share about your experience as a neurodiverse person who's running, because as I mentioned, politics needs more diversity. So we do need more candidates like you. I know a lot of my students are neurodiverse. To see someone doing what you're doing, it is really inspiring for younger people. So you might not realize it now, but you are leaving a legacy on our community that's really awesome. Thanks, Thomas.
Great, thank you. And Thomas, about Lee.
I have no personal beef with Lee.
So what's awesome about her?
She is a wonderful, awesome person, very caring and nurturing and passionate, especially in the realm of healthcare and long-term care. And I'm really impressed with how much she genuinely cares about people. I just have a problem with her party. I think she ran with the wrong party. She would have done really well with either of our parties. But yeah, she is an awesome person. Thank you.
So now this is your opportunity. It's 3 minutes to say why you think you're awesome, and in your closing remarks. So 3 minutes each. And Thomas, I think you're going to start us off first on this, and thank you.
All right. I'd like to thank the Daily Bread Food Bank again for hosting this event. You're doing wonderful work here, and I promise I'm doing my best to put you out of business. Thanks again to Lee and Farheen for attending, and thanks again to everyone in attendance here tonight and online for the opportunity to earn your votes. And an extra large thank you to everyone who has already voted for me in the advanced polls. I've been receiving messages and emails every day from electors who have already cast their ballots, and it's been extremely motivating. So thank you all very, very much. The record numbers of people going to the advanced polls and sending mail-in ballots gives me so much hope for the future of Ontario. It really feels like everyone understands how much is at stake in this election. But we can't claim victory yet. Everyone still needs to go out on Thursday and vote. Remember that your employer must give you 3 hours paid time off to vote. Bring friends and family with you to the polls. Register a new voter. And if you need a ride to the polls, just ask for it. Austria, Belgium, Finland, Germany, Ireland, Luxembourg, and New Zealand are all currently governed by coalitions with Green parties. Also, 23 other countries around the world have elected Green representatives. Just during this campaign, Green parties in England and Australia have celebrated huge victories. In Prince Edward Island, the Green Party was elected to become the official opposition in 2019. Ontario could be next. Around the entire province, Green candidates are seeing our momentum build like never before, myself included. Electors of all colors are turning green because they're fed up with the other parties continuing to neglect the climate crisis, which has now been compounded with the housing crisis, the mental health crisis, and the affordability crisis. The Green Party has the best plan to deal with these crises because only our party acknowledges that they are all connected. It's time for change. Time to stop doubling down on fossil fuels and finally start building the green economy of the future. Time to elect MPPs who are committed to ending first past the post, so every vote will count in future elections. And it's time to put the environment, people, and communities over profit, so we no longer need food banks. Thank you.
Thank you, Farheen.
Okay. Ooh, thank you. So thank you again, Daily Bread Food Bank and the whole team that organized this event. Thank you for people that have shown up online or in person. This is, as I mentioned previously, really integral to our democracy that we have these discussions and hear from different people's perspectives before we make that decision. So if you missed the first little bit of it, I introduced myself. I'm a high school teacher. And one of the reasons why I made this jump into politics is because I really want to do well by my students. I want to do right by them. It is already difficult to be a teenager and navigate an awkward time in life. If you've interacted with a teenager recently, I'm sure you can understand. But this is made much more difficult when your family does not have paid sick days, or when you're facing housing insecurity, or when a climate crisis is threatening your future. I've learned that even what the best teachers can accomplish within the classroom, it's not enough to address these larger systemic issues that are really plaguing our communities. And that's really where my activism emerges from. If we had a government that cared, they would have put in paid sick days. They would have made more serious climate action and done more to curb the housing crisis that is affecting us all. This election, we have the opportunity to elect leaders like me, who are from the community, who understand the community, and who have shown up for the community. So I've shown up before by helping with outreach for booster shots, rapid tests, and high-quality masks when our government wasn't sharing that information. I've supported Stonegate Community Health Center and Lamp Community Health Center when they had their pop-ups. I distributed that information door to door. I connected with organizations like Maybell Arts to get them connected so they could have their own pop-up clinic. I've showed up for housing issues when I supported the tenants at 25 Maybelle that were facing unfair evictions from their landlords. We've seen our Conservative MPP, Christine Hogarth, not show up, just like tonight. The Liberals have had 15 years since Mike Harris's cuts and his government to show up for people. And really, they have just propped up Conservative policies instead of reversing them. So if we want different results, we need to make different choices. And this is what I want every single person to take home tonight. If we want different results, we need to make different choices. And the NDP has the strongest chance we've had in the last 30 years to form government this time. We were only 4% behind in the last provincial election, and we only need to flip 10 seats to form government. We need to show up for our community, show up for each other, and show up at the polls. So please do vote NDP this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Lee.
Thank you again to the organizers for tonight. Thank you for all of you for participating and the many questions that you posed to us tonight. We've talked about a lot of important issues tonight. We've talked about affordability. We've talked about housing. We've talked about healthcare. We haven't talked about a whole bunch of other really important things like education, like what is happening with the active erosion of our public education system. These issues are so important and they matter. And we must ensure, that in the next 2 days, we're making choices. We've got important choices to make. I mentioned at the beginning that I've worked in healthcare all my life. I've worked as the president of a hospital through this pandemic, and I've resigned that job to run because I cannot face another 4 years of the kinds of decisions that we have seen with the Ford government. And I don't even want to picture what it will look like 4 years from now with that government unchecked. So we must ensure that we put our best foot forward to be able to turn this seat in Etobicoke-Lakeshore at a very minimum. Give us the chance to address all these issues in the very real ways that we've talked about tonight. The progressive vote in Etobicoke-Lakeshore, I believe, is the Liberal Party. It is your Liberal candidate, and we can make sure that we start to turn to a better future and start to address these issues on day one. I'm really grateful to many in Etobicoke-Lakeshore for the participation in our campaign to date. There's been a real momentum building around it. And, I want to say thank you to all of those. You asked earlier about what's been inspiring. The second thing for me is really just the ways people have stepped forward because they believe so strongly that we need something better, that we do need a different and a better government. So it really, truly, thank you. It really, truly would be my honor to serve you. I have spent my life serving patients, families, most recently through the pandemic, that extended to the community in our pandemic response. I would give the same care and attention in service to all of you as your MPP and take that role very, very seriously. So I am asking for your vote on June 2nd, and let's move on to a much better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. We're going to turn things over to Neil Bowden now, but before I do, I want to say a word of thanks. I want to thank the teams that made tonight possible. Our friends at LAMP. I want to thank Diane, Omar, Anwar, Eva, Shauna, Heather, and the team for making sure that tonight could be facilitated. I want to thank you for being here, for caring about the community by showing up tonight. And finally, I want to say thank you to each of the candidates. You have put your name on the line, and that takes courage. And I want to thank you for that courageous decision. It takes sacrifice, it takes time away from your family and your friends to put service above self and to put the public ahead of your own interests. And so I want to thank each of you for the visions that you have articulated tonight, and wish you all the very best in the coming days. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to one of our board members, Neil Bowden, who's going to close things out.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. As Neil said, I am a board member, and I've been a board member here at Daily Bread since 2014. It's been an honor. It's been an honor to be here tonight as well, and I happen to live in this riding. Oh, can't hear. There we go. That's better. I'll repeat that. So I have been a board member here at Daily Bread since 2014, and it's been an honor to be a board member here, and it's an honor to be here with you tonight. I am a resident in this riding, and so everything said tonight was particularly applicable to me, just as it is to you. I'm going to echo some of the things that Neil just said. First of all, thank you to Farheen, to Lee, and to Thomas for your thoughtful answers tonight and for all of your passion. Best of luck to you on Election Day. Thank you to Cadone, I can see you through here, to Neil, to Daily Bread, and to Lamp for the awesome work that you do every single day, and in particular for the work that you did tonight and are doing tonight just to prepare for this event. For those of you here and online, there will be a video of this available for review on our website and on the social channels, so you can catch up with that later if you need to. And then lastly, thank you to each of you who've made the trip here tonight and to those who have watched virtually. Your participation in this event is a critical part of the democratic process, as it will be on Election Day. Your vote matters. It's your opportunity and our opportunity in Ontario to say who we want to stand for the things that are important to us. So I encourage everyone to vote, because the provincial government, as we've heard tonight, has a number of important decisions to make that will impact each of our lives and the lives of our communities. With that, we'll close it down. If you do need any information, actually, there's a few tables around here that will tell us where we can vote in this riding. And best of luck and stay safe, everyone. Good night.